It's time. And just like our Lord and Savior Mariah Carey, this series has been thawing since October because, as you may know or may not know, unlike the rest of the year, December is actually very special and extremely exciting on this channel because, say it with me now, it's Style Study Month. That's right, this month we're going to do not one, not two, but 5 separate style studies back to back. And this is just me saying thank you so much to all of you guys for viewing and engaging with the content on this channel. You really make all of this work so worth it. And you guys, every single one of these style studies has been requested either in the comments below or in my Discord server, so you know this month is going to be an excellent learning opportunity. And to kick things off in the most amazing way we possibly can, we're going to start by taking a look at the incredible and often mysterious illustrator who goes by the name BM. This was requested twice on Discord, so massive thank you to Velvet and Simony for requesting this video. I really hope you guys enjoy it. If you're new here and this is your very first style study, hi, welcome. I'm so glad you're here because today we're gonna level up your art by like 1,000,000%. Style Study is a regular series we do here on my channel where we take a look at some of our favorite contemporary artists, analyze their work and see what we can learn from it. Keyword, learn. We're not here to plagiarize anyone's work or copy their style. We're only here to learn some cool art tips and tricks and see how we can apply them to finding our own unique art style. I usually structure my style studies in 3 parts. In part 1, we'll take a look at BM's work, analyze their style and see what we can learn from it. Part 2 will be a study of one of their original paintings. The beautiful reference I've chosen today is this one. And in part 3, we'll apply everything that we learned today to an original painting of our own. As always, if you guys enjoy this video and learned something today, please do remember to like and subscribe. Comment below your biggest takeaway from this video today and come say hello on Instagram and Discord. All of the links are down below. But now, if you're ready, grab a snack, sit back, and let's dive into another style study featuring BM. BM is a digital illustrator from South Korea, and that's about all the information there is out there about them. Seriously, I looked and there is nothing about this artist, so this intro section is probably going to be really short. What we do have are these beautifully stylized character portraits that are just so conventionally attractive. This gorgeous art has garnered them over 236,000 followers on Twitter and over 127,000 followers on Instagram. So, as you can tell, BM's art is extremely striking because of all the stylistic choices that they make. The characters look like these beautiful porcelain dolls, just so aesthetically pleasing and also endearing. It's like they know exactly how to style up these facial features and compositional choices in order to make the painting as appealing and eye-catching as possible. It's like that art is very formalist. Speaking of lists, here are 4 key characteristics to BM's art. So one of the very first things you'll notice about BM's art is how abstract the edges are. So if you look at things around the edges of the character silhouette, such as the hair, the clothing, and even accessories, you see that there is often a very blurry line where the character ends and the background begins. Well, blurry in a metaphorical sense, because there are definitely very hard edges. But the thing is, it's not just one solid hard edge, it's a lot of little ones kind of next to each other that break up the silhouette. As a result, what would have been one big edge of the silhouette is now pretty much just an abstract bunch of shapes that blend right into the colors of the background. The key here, however, is restraint, which, let's be honest, is probably the hardest thing of all to master, but BM doesn't make every single silhouette edge look all abstract and blended. They choose very specific parts of the silhouette. For one, these abstract edges never lie on the face itself or any of the skin for that matter. It's almost always either the hair or the clothing that gets worked into the background. I think there are actually two very important reasons for this. First, the more texture we have, the more movement it creates, especially in this type of abstraction where the texture is made of a series of short, straight brush strokes. On the contrary, the face has no abstraction. The texture is smooth and the edges are neat and solid, making it a visually quiet zone for our eyes to rest on. And so when you look at a BM painting, you might find that you're so captivated by the face, you kind of don't want to look away. That's because the chaos of all of the texture kind of throws you back to the calmer face. The other reason, and this is my favorite, is because there is story in the abstraction. No, wait, before you think I'm off on another flight of romantic fancy, let me explain. So with the edges of the silhouette kind of blending into the background, it almost feels like the character is the wallflower kind, like they really don't stand out from the surroundings, at least not in terms of their style choices such as hair, clothing, and accessories. However, what does stand out from the background is their face. And so the composition feels a little like a gentle blossoming of the face, like a soft unveiling of the beauty of the character, the kind of beauty you see in people that you wouldn't see unless you looked closer. Okay, maybe I did go off on another flight of romantic fancy, hush. Alright, so earlier on this video, I mentioned how BM uses pretty much every single stylistic choice that we know of that would make a face appealing. So these characters have beautiful large almond eyes that lie quite low on the head. We know from previous style studies that large eyes placed quite low on the head tend to mimic a baby face look, which is instantly appealing to us on instinct because babies are adorable. To add to this, we see a fairly minimized but still slightly believable nose and soft lips with a pronounced cupid's bow. It's not just stylized to be completely unrealistic though, because you do still see realistically rendered dimensions and details such as the nostrils and even a little bit of texture on the lips. But at the same time, the exaggeration makes these facial features feel extremely conventionally attractive, to the point where no real person looks like this. You'll also see a fairly defined jaw that narrows quite significantly to a thin but rounded chin, and the entire face seems to sit quite low on the head, which makes the forehead seem very long, again emulating that baby face look. The skin on the face is super smooth, almost to the point of looking like actual marble or porcelain, and I think a lot of this has to do with the subtle color variations that we'll look at in just a sec. While BM doesn't post very many full body pieces, the bodies are definitely rather idealized, so very skinny arms, a narrow waist, etc. Again, really sticking to what makes a character conventionally appealing. Like I said, it's this almost formulaic approach to stylization. This, in my opinion, is where BM's work really shines. The color palettes in their art are deceptively simple looking, but there is actually a lot of nuance there. I think the one word I would use to describe the colors is gentle. They use some very soft, subtle colors in every painting, especially in the skin. Okay, wait, I didn't quite explain that right. It's not that all the colors are soft and neutral, but rather that the contrast within each element is very low. So here, for instance, these are the brightest and darkest skin tones in the face outside of specular highlights. Nothing too crazy different. However, even though the hair is significantly darker than the skin, if we compare the darkest and lightest tones within the hair, they aren't too far apart in terms of value either. It is all low contrast within each compositional element, although the contrast between different elements isn't necessarily also low. But coming back to the face, you'll notice that the low contrast also extends to elements other than just the skin. The pupils in the eyes, for instance, can be super light, causing the eyes to look glassy and almost supernatural. The shadows of the nostrils and in the parting of the mouth are pretty much never super dark, which again makes it all lower contrast and soft. Going back to what we say about the abstraction, this is what makes the face look so very smooth, which then makes it a super visually quiet zone in the composition. You'll also see some really pale, warm, dappled sunlight across the face, and it just instantly adds so much life and realism to what is otherwise a fairly desaturated, cool tones face. We'll look at this more deeply in part 3 of the video, but what I really love are the subtle color variations across the skin of the face. When we look at these faces, they look pretty much skin toned, but looking a little closer at the colors in isolation tells us the real depth of detail that goes into BM's work. You'll see that actually most of the face has a really desaturated, almost blue or green tinge. Of course, it isn't literally blue or green, it's a desaturated skin tone, but then you see a saturated pop of magenta or red at the apples of the cheek and the center of the nose, as well as some really warm shadows in the eye sockets, on the nose bridge and under the jaw, and then it makes those desaturated tones look straight up blue and green. We essentially have warm shadows and cool highlights with some neutral but highly saturated midtones. Finally, let's just quickly look at the texture in BM's work, because there's actually more to it than just texture. Looking at these paintings, I'd say there's way more impressionistic brushwork than there is a lot of realistic blending. So you'll see a lot of these really detailed brush strokes right at the edges of all that abstraction that we looked at earlier, lots of really textured marks in the fabric and the hair. And like I said, this usually indicates a lot of visual noise that surrounds the softer, smoother blending in the skin. So we definitely have some textured framing. However, there is also a lot of texture in the tiniest details. So the eyelids and eyelashes, for instance, you'll see that there are tons and tons of little tiny scratch marks directly around the eyes and just very sharp specular highlights. Now, as we also saw earlier, the contrast within the iris itself is actually very, very low. So what this texture does is separate the super soft eyes from the super soft face around them. As a result, this creates a nice sharp ring of definition around the eyes. Sometimes when you have large areas of skin that is rather smooth, you'll also see super sharp textures in things like jewelry to break up the flat areas. So essentially, we're seeing little pops of really sharp texture as like a microcosmic form of the larger impressionistic brushwork. I hope that makes sense. So to sum up part 1 of the study, here are 4 key characteristics to BM's work. Number 1, the abstraction around the edges of the hair and clothing causes the character to almost blend into the background, while the strong silhouette of the face really draws the viewer in. 2, the characters are stylized to look very conventionally attractive, with large almond eyes, a minimized nose, soft lips, and a narrow jaw. Number 3, the colors and lighting are soft, gentle, and low contrast, with warm shadows, cool desaturated highlights, and pops of saturated neutral midtones. And number 4, BM uses very impressionistic brushwork and sharp textures to break up the otherwise visually quiet composition. So for our study today, this is the beautiful reference that I've chosen. It felt like it encompassed pretty much all the elements that we've spoken about today, but wasn't so complex that it would take ages to study. Now, here's the thing. Right the second I started to put a sketch down, we had issues. I simply could not get the proportions or the tilt of the head right. I genuinely could not tell you exactly which part of the face was wrong. It all felt very, very wrong. Look how pretty the original is, and look what my sketch looks like. Ugh. But I do believe the reason for this challenge is the abstraction. Everything is already so highly stylized that it's hard to kind of use your intuition and decide where to place each feature, and add to that the super smooth and low contrast skin, and it was basically impossible to put down a definitive sketch. I got it as good as I possibly could, and then just sighed and went on to add color in. As always, I tried to color match with the reference image on PureRef, although the challenge was finding a good enough brush that put down some chunky texture. But once I was fairly happy with the background, it was time to get started on the character. You guys, I was right. The sketch looked awful, but once the colors and values started to come in, the entire face transformed. Now, I'm pretty sure I either messed up the recording or the file broke, because I have no footage whatsoever of how I painted that eye. Promise I'm not trying to gatekeep. I'll show you how I painted the eyes in the original, but lost footage aside, I think my favorite part has to be the way that the nose turned out. Noses are notoriously hard to paint, but I found the subtle low contrast tones to be even more of a challenge. I still don't really think I got the proportions exactly right, because she doesn't look exactly like the reference, but after some abstract texture for the hair, it was time to refine. One really neat thing that I loved about painting this piece was that the specular highlights are actually just a really pale peach color, not a white at all. Again, still keeping it relatively subtle, even with the brightest highlights. Finally, after some more texturing and adjustments, here's the finished study. Not my proudest, but boy did I enjoy that process. Okay, I have something to confess. I was able to get the original painting from start to finish in one day. I don't know if that's just a random fluke or if it is a merit of the style, but this is probably one of the most beautiful styles I've painted, and it also took barely any time. That said, I of course started with a sketch. I wasn't after anything too crazy complex at all, just a basic portrait, maybe with a focus on some really nice color and lighting. Just like with the study, I wasn't super thrilled with the sketch itself, but we've learned our lesson and we're gonna trust the process. I painted a quick, super abstract background with like 4 flat tones blended into each other, and then blocked our character in. I initially started with purple hair, but that eventually changed, as you'll see. With the skin here, I specifically wanted to explore just how desaturated we can go with most of the face without losing its skin-like quality. So I did go very, very grey and blue at the beginning. I'd also gone for some bright yellow eyes to offset the purple hair, but again, that changed over time. The thing to always remember here is the subtle contrast. Nothing crazy dramatic, we're keeping it all soft and subtle the whole time. However, we do need all the texture around the eyes, because remember, we want to break up that smoothness with some sharp details. After rendering the hair, perhaps overdoing it to be honest, I realized that purple was just a touch too cold for the piece, and so I reddened it up a bit. And after adding a little more life to the face via just some saturated tones, I also painted the necklace to have a bunch of super sharp details, breaking up all that smooth skin, remember? After changing the top, I felt like the yellow in her eyes stood out a lot, and not in a good way. So I went over it with some blue and boom, she's perfect. After a ton more defining, I decided to give that dappled sunlight a try. I literally just grabbed a pale peach color and a hard opaque brush and painted a flat shape on her cheek and nose, and then blended out the bottom edge of the cheek highlight and the top edge of the nose one. And boom, instant sunlight. And then I liked that effect so much, I pulled it down to the chin, the hair, and the other cheek. Yeah, I know, I never know when to stop. I also remembered that we want a soft, low contrast in the eyes as well. So I grabbed an airbrush and a light lavender and painted over the entire iris, pupil and all, and boom, instant glassy eye. So with all of that in place, here is the final painting and I love it so much. Let me know what you guys think. And there we have it, BM demystified. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I for sure am taking that dappled sunlight on the skin tip with me for the rest of my artistic career. But what do you guys think? What was your key takeaway from this study? Let me know in the comments below. Massive thank you again to Velvet and Simony for requesting this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it and that it's everything you've been looking for. And if the rest of you guys have enjoyed this video as well, please remember to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps the channel out so much. And make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications turned on so you don't miss the rest of Style Study Month the second it drops. Come say hello on Instagram and Discord, the links are down below. And if you want to support the work that I do here and grab yourself some exclusive art rewards, all of the step-by-step progressions for every single painting I've done, as well as all of the complete speed paints and my extended brush kit for both Photoshop and Critter, you can come check out my Patreon. I'll leave a link up here in the cards and that will be so helpful. But that's everything I have to say today, so thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Check out the rest of the Style Study series down here in the outro. Happy Style Study Month, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!